folks, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat and today I would like to talk about Tender as the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. It's also the pick of the month for the Genre Soup book club, and I will link the discussion as soon as the link is available in the card and in the description. And sorry I can't roll my R's, so I butchered that last name as well. In the story, Marcos works in a processing plant for heads, humans raised for consumption, because a disease that affected all animals and gets passed on to human beings when they eat meat essentially wiped out the meat industry, and they needed a replacement, so the world, or this country in particular at least, turned to cannibalism. Aside from that, he also has to deal with the death of his baby son, a wife who moved out following the death of their son, a father in a nursing home who doesn't recognize him anymore due to dementia, and an estranged sister who does absolutely nothing to help with the care for their father. When a client gifts him a head of good stock, things get a bit more complicated. This was wild and disgusting in many ways, so if the idea of cannibalism, sexual assault, torture, animal cruelty, humans being hunted for sport... Did I get even everything? If those things put you off, then this book is not for you. This review will contain some spoilers. I will try to keep them all towards the end and put a warning on screen, but in order to talk about a couple of things, you just have to put spoilers in here. Book club discussion will be full of spoilers too, so you've been warned. The book tries to make Marcos appear as human as possible, and it does so by showing you his grief at losing his father while the man is still very much alive, and through the strained relationship with his sister, who has absolutely no interest in dealing or helping with their father. I think the relationships with his father and his sister get more time on the page than his grief at losing his baby son, but it does come up. And while all of this tries to make him appear more human and more likable possibly, that totally did not work for me, because he's so detached from the horrors that happen around him and that he partakes in at the processing plant and in other areas as well, that it was a bit like following a monster around. There are 2 points in the story where other characters or the circumstances cast doubt upon the disease that essentially crippled the meat industry and made cannibalism an option. But these things never get explored. You spend the whole time with just Marcos and the things he does, but there are way bigger things afoot that I would find far more interesting. Both the question whether the disease is actually real or not, and then also the experiments that a certain scientist is working on that Marcos visits at some point. But you only ever get like a couple of lines about that, and it never gets explored. So you never get any answers by the end of this book either. And as for crippling the meat industry in one swift blow, I guess, I have doubts about this as well. A huge part of what is grown in agriculture goes towards animal feed. So if all of those animals were culled from one day to the other, then yes, you would cause a big gap in the food supply. And you can't just use what is grown for animal feed for human consumption either. But if animals vanish from one day to the other, then you would certainly change those fields over as soon as possible to something that is fit for human consumption to bridge the gap that you just created. But apparently that doesn't happen in this world, and clearly the next best step is also fixing the problem of overpopulation with cannibalism. Yeah. At one point, Marcos visits a client of the plant, and he has put on a hunt where a couple of rich people hunt some of the heads and a musician who's not so much dead that this looks like the only way out, for fun. And this reminded me a lot of either The Purge or Squid Game. But it doesn't get explored much more than this either. You just see them sitting around a table eating what they've just hunted, and okay, thanks. And all this makes me think is like, well, maybe it is time to eat the witch, just not literally. Please, not literally. So I guess on the whole you could read this book as a warning as to what happens once you consider another human being lesser, whatever reason for. You know, in case you missed history lessons on World War II, slavery, and, you know, some of the other things we've done in our time on this planet. This kind of fits the impression that I got from Marcus. He could have also been an SS officer or someone in charge of a concentration camp in the Second World War, because the detachment he shows for the horrors that he partakes in, and even though he sometimes has a bit of doubt about whether heads should really be treated as they are, he's happy to just keep going with it as long as it doesn't affect his life. So yeah, not sure how you could possibly ever like this character, but yeah, here we are. The impression that this could be compared to a concentration camp is also supported by the couple of German words that are thrown in. So the plant that produces heads is called Tod or Death, and something else, I forgot the rest of the name, but it has death in its name. And the guy that runs the processing plant, or that owns the processing plant that Marcus works in, is called Krieg or War. And if pestilence and hunger were not so similar to their English counterparts, I would have totally expected the other two riders of the apocalypse to show up as well, because the world Marcus lives in is certainly apocalyptic and the end of humanity. Now, some spoilers, and I really wish there had been warnings about those, because I mean, I know I was getting into horror, but that doesn't automatically mean I have to read about animal abuse, right? I mean, the cannibalism, obviously, that's advertised in the blurb, so you know that's coming, but the abuse and murder of some puppies on the side, I didn't need to read about this, really. So at some point, Marcus goes into an abandoned zoo and finds a couple of puppies. He is nice to them, he cuddles them, and they are quite cute. And then it jumps a couple of months, he goes back to the zoo and he witnesses how a couple of teenagers torture and kill those puppies. So I'm not sure whether there's just a logic flaw in the story or whether I missed something, but if he's gone for 9 months and then comes back, how are these still puppies? They should be a good deal bigger. But either way, some puppies get tortured and killed, and I hate it. Even more than the topical cannibalism of the book. The one point where I think that the cannibalism that they are partaking in here is actually worse than what's currently happening to animals in slaughterhouses. At some point, his sister wants a head to keep at home. And they actually do this. They have like a separate door in the kitchen to a cooled room. And they just chopped this person's arm off, cooked that, and served it at a dinner party or no, a wake or whatever. And the person still lives in this room essentially, just with like one limb chopped off. And it's like, wow, cannibalism in and by itself was not bad enough. You also need to torture people like that and just lock them away in a room while you chop them to pieces bit by bit. Like, holy shit. And now to the bit where Marcus really shows you his true colors. You know, if you had any doubt whether he's actually not quite okay with what happens with some of the things around him, because he himself doesn't really eat meat unless he's with clients. So you would think that he has a bit of a doubt about how to treat heads, but when this client gifts him Jasmine, he has her for a couple of days and then decides raping her is a good idea because I don't know why, but she's there, she's his property, so he just goes ahead and does it with the comment, I know I shouldn't, but I did it anyway. It's like, yeah, great, that's a brilliant excuse, thank you. Can you just go die in a hole now? But no, he doesn't. And then I actually have to spoil the ending here. 9 months later, Jasmine gives birth to a baby. While Marcus's wife is finally back home, I mean, she's grieving and she moved to her mom's, but she comes back because he gets distracted with the pregnancy and doesn't reply on the phone as much anymore or something. So Celia comes back and is disgusted with him at first for having impregnated someone that they technically do not consider human. She helps deliver the baby though, and then as soon as they hold the baby in their arms, she's like, oh, well, she can give us more babies, and he decides that's too dangerous and kills her instead. And that's how the book ends. It's like, what was this supposed to show me? That people are assholes? Because I could have told you that without reading so many disgusting things. Yeah, so this book deserves like all the trigger warnings and is messed up through and through. I am not sure what it's trying to tell us though, because the things that I find more interesting do not get explored, and all I get to see is that, hey, this person that looks kind of normal on the surface is still a monster. It's like, yep, I knew that before as well, but okay. So if you care for a truly dystopian read, and I would suggest reading it on an empty stomach, just because there are plenty of disgusting things happening here, then this might be for you. It certainly kept my interest from beginning to end, but I didn't really like it, so I would give it this cat and a paw, because clearly I'm not much of a horror reader. And I mean, if you really want to hate the main character you follow, then this might be for you. Let me know in the comments what your favorite dystopian novel is, not necessarily in the horror genre. Like and subscribe if you want to help this channel out, and I'll be back next week with another video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!